Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and of course, I'm joined by the amazing, the invincible Kevin Logan. How are you?
Well, I'm invincible, clearly. How are you?
Well, I'm a bit tired because I just woke up from a nap, and someone in the comments actually said that I was already sleeping. They've clocked it, but I know you're going to keep me awake. You're going to keep me excited because we've got some great stories, but we've also got Kevin, you're a fantastic guest anyway. But I think
Well,
this is going
thank
to be a
you.
really good show.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Now, coming up on tonight's show, we've got a Labour MP calls for Jeremy Corbyn to apologise over the band Kneecap. Lisa Nandy tried to undermine Labour friends of Palestine, and Joe Biden never pushed Israel for a ceasefire. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. Help us reach our goal of 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We'll be getting to your comments at the end, so please make sure you are very busy in the chat. Now, on to our first story. As you may have seen this week, the band Kneecap have found themselves in controversy after footage emerged which apparently showed them calling for MPs to be killed. They've come out and said that the video removes context, but nevertheless apologised, specifically to the families of Joe Cox and David Amos, both who were murdered. Now, one person you wouldn't have thought would have been involved is Jeremy Corbyn. So, Labour MP David Taylor in Parliament has called for Jeremy Corbyn to apologise because he appeared in this photo with the band in 2023. And we're going to take a look.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, I wrote to Glastonbury Festival urging them to remove this music group from their lineup. The reason I did this is because they have allegedly called for the murder of Conservative colleagues in this House, and because we've seen the footage of them appearing to show support for Hezbollah and Hamas, including the waving of a flag of the proscribed organisation. Words, as others have said, have tragic consequences, and beloved colleagues Joe Cox and Sir David Amos were tragically murdered, and the 16th of June 2016 remains one of the worst days of my life, and I know many colleagues in this House feel the same, and we all have a duty to prevent this from ever happening again. I welcome the comments the Minister has made around Glastonbury. May I also ask if he agrees with me that whilst there is a police investigation, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube and others should strongly consider taking their music off their platform until that investigation is over. And may I also note the absence of the of the member for Islington North, who is not present and not involved in this discussion, and will he join me in condemning his appearance in a photograph with that group, and will he join me?
I mean, it just got cut off at the end there, but he shared it and he tweeted saying, will he apologise? Now, I don't think this MP understands the passage of time. Right? Jeremy Corbyn appeared in a photo with them 2 years ago. Now, Keir Starmer has come out and commented on the band, calling the apology half-hearted. Responding to an overnight statement by the group, Keir Starmer's spokesperson said, "It is half-hearted. We completely reject, in the strongest possible terms, the comments they've made, particularly in relation to MPs and intimidation, as well as obviously the situation in the Middle East. It's right that police are looking into these videos." The number 10 aide said Starmer found comments by the Irish trio completely unacceptable and that there's no place in our society for intimidation and abuse. I mean, we're still waiting for his apology for saying that Israel had the right to cut off water and electricity to Gaza, a literal war crime. Now, the video of Kneecap, maybe it was a joke, right? We don't have any other reason to believe that it isn't. Having said that, these are jokes you shouldn't be making, and it was the right thing to do for them to apologise. However, why the hell is Keir Starmer getting involved with an Irish band, all these MPs calling on festivals such as Glastonbury to drop them? I mean, I'm sorry, but Keir Starmer and the rest of the political establishment are facilitating Israel's genocide of Palestinians. You don't get to do that. You don't get to send arms that are used to blow up babies and then turn around and say, what Kneecap did was disgusting. Cancel them. As far as I'm aware, murdering children is a lot worse than words even. Kevin, I do want to talk about Kneecap specifically, but first, I want to get your thoughts on this particular Labour MP. He's one of the new 2024 MPs. Why is he talking about Jeremy Corbyn?
Because he's got Corbyn derangement syndrome. There's no other reason why you would possibly invoke his name in this. As you say, he took a picture with a group 2 years ago. I hardly see that that's relevant to the current ongoing situation. Also, he wasn't even in the chamber to answer the question, so he literally got admonished. Not only did he look like a weirdo obsessive, but he also got admonished by the Deputy Speaker for breaking parliamentary rules, which is that you're supposed to tell a person if you're going to directly reference them in Parliament, which is only fair because it gives them the right to respond.
Right, reply, yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely fine. It's just madness. And I think this story, and indeed the other two stories, are fine examples of the Zionist capture of Western institutions, frankly. And note that I said Zionist and not Jewish, because a lot of people will accuse you of anti-Semitism. Most of the people involved in all of this are evangelical Christians in the United States and their dark money. Even so, Zionist capture of British institutions, be it members of the Labour backbench, be the Prime Minister, as you quoted there. Although I do have to ask whether he had to ring up Isaac Herzog, the President of Israel, to get clarification on that point, as he did before the SNP's Opposition Day motion a couple of years ago. Yes, this is such a silly story, which is only coming to light now because of the cultural impact of the Coachella Music Festival. Right. Where Kneecap, the Irish rap trio, if I can allow myself to feel very old in saying it that way, played at Coachella and put things behind them saying "fuck Israel" and "free Palestine," which was too much, literally too much, even for, to allow anyone to say anything against the one position you're allowed to hold. The Coachella live stream was literally cut because, again, imagine that, a rock star making a controversial statement. Crazy, I know. And of course, now they've dredged up these clips of them saying, controversial things, which might indeed break the law. I don't know. And from 2 years ago and 18 months ago, these two clips of the either the quote unquote kill your MP or the support for Hamas and Hezbollah. This is such an obvious case of the same smear tactic that was, used on Jeremy Corbyn and has been used on any supporter of Palestine over the course of, decades, but certainly over the course of the last couple of years. The cultural impact of them saying that at Coachella and breaking the iron grip that the Zionist message has had in Western media was so much that they're now using these old clips to try and smear them, to try and undermine the basic message of maybe don't do a genocide with, again, the same smear of anti-Semitism, the same smear of, oh, you're a terrorist. And ultimately, it's one of the most fantastically counterproductive things that I've ever seen. Because rather than trying to silence them, what you've actually done is amplified their message. It's almost like they've literally never heard of the Streisand effect, right? On Spotify, they've gone from 100,000.
Yeah, they've gone to millions, haven't they?
To over 1.3 million was the last time I saw. So you've more than tenfold their listeners. You've more than doubled their number of subscribers on YouTube. You've turned them from, a band on the rise into one of the biggest acts in the world that's probably going to headline Glastonbury now. Well done. Honestly, I'm sure one day making rock stars look really cool by trying to ban them will definitely work. Idiots.
To pick up on what you said, though, right? For those that are thinking, well, they're only coming down on them because of this video that's resurfaced and what they've said. But you got to remember, the attack started when they simply said that Palestinians should live. So at Coachella, they had, F Israel, and then they were like, Palestinians are being genocided, essentially. They had criticisms. They had attacks from Sharon Osbourne. Don't know why she's involved. So the idea that, oh, no, it's because of what they said about those MPs, well, not specific MPs, they just made a really bad joke, that was the reason why. It's clearly not. And I'm sure if a Zionist said the same thing but in a different context, it wouldn't have been picked up on.
Well, they
I mean,
do. They do all the time.
Yeah.
How many Zionists have we heard, including the current Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom, make overtly genocidal
Yeah, absolutely.
statements towards Palestinians and indeed towards Arabs more generally? We know this. Zionism is in itself a genocidal movement. This is the way it goes. Literally, the Israeli Knesset had a debate about the degree to which you should be able to rape Palestinian inmates. You've seen. You've got members of the Israeli cabinet who are literally have arrest warrants out for them from the ICC, and they're just welcomed as heroes in Washington DC. It's embarrassing. They've sat on these clips for, in one case, nearly 2 years. This was from 2023. That clip. And they're now using it because of the cultural impact of them saying these things that you're not allowed to say in a place where they think they have absolute cultural hegemony, and they don't.
And I think that's the true story here. Like, again, what they said in that video is not that anyone's endorsing that, but the true story is it was sat upon. Kneecap, essentially, they're probably at their most famous now. I mean, they are definitely now. When it comes to Spotify, right? And people come out and said, "Oh, look how bad Kneecap is," because they went to Coachella and they talked about Israel Palestine. And you know, had they said nothing, right, this video would not have resurfaced.
No,
it is the real form of cancel culture.
100%,
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea that politicians deign themselves worthy of being able to tell Glastonbury who can and can't play there is absolutely nonsense. The idea that because they were given 1.1 million in PPP loans, or the equivalent in the UK, during COVID, in order that the Glastonbury Festival, one of Britain's largest cultural exports, lest we forget, it means that we should somehow, like, they owe us the banning of certain acts. Like, look at some of the unbelievably disgusting acts that have played that festival. People who are convicted criminals, wife beaters, domestic abusers, people who sing openly about sexual assault, all kinds of homophobic and racist language that's used by certain artists, and people accept that that's part of art. That's just a part of the human experience, and that art expresses the human experience. And people understand that, except with this one thing, because again, the institutions have been entirely captured by Zionist political force, basically.
I mean, that is actually a really good point there. I think it's a great point because, you hear some pretty foul stuff, should we say, from artists, and we know that they don't. Well, most of them anyway, don't actually repeat it in real life. It is a form of art. You might not like it. It might not be everyone's tastes, but that is accepted. But if you want to, maybe you could see a lawyer making this argument. Kneecap were just simply doing art, and it might be grotesque to you, but why can't we treat this as a level playing field? And obviously the answer is, again, it's the context of it, what it's behind. Talking or singing about sexual assault, fine.
This is the thing, that the you have to allow, I think, artists a certain amount of leeway that you don't allow people outside of that context, right?
Of course,
which might sound odd, but stick with me for a second. The comparison has been drawn between what Kneecap said in those clips and the people who were imprisoned for inflammatory, murderous statements during the race riots last summer, and they're completely wrong to make that comparison, because there is a significant difference between a rock star saying, or a rap star, whatever, a musician who obviously markets themselves as being rebellious and anti-authoritarian and anti-establishment, saying a thing that's edgy and bad and might step over the line in its absolutely purist interpretation, and someone who is not doing a piece of art, someone who is just saying, go and murder migrants, go and burn down hotels. That is a direct call to action. Nobody in that room that night that heard the phrase "kill your local MP" went out and killed their local MP, because everyone understands the context there, that they're saying an edgy thing. That's the point of it. The rock stars have always been rebellious to some extent, and people want that. There is a need within younger people to have that cultural separation between previous generations. There's a fantastic story of Alice Cooper, his manager during the 1970s. Alice Cooper's sales were not going well in Britain, And he said the one way to make sales increase is to make sure that kids think their parents hate the artist in question, right? So he purposefully mocked up an image of Alice Cooper naked on the side of a tour bus and had it break down in the middle of Leicester Square. So you had a naked image of Alice Cooper in the middle of Leicester Square. Free advertising, it made all of the thing. And all of a sudden his records started flying off the shelves and all of these big venues wanted to book him and etc. etc. And he's had a 50-year long career at the top, right?
Yeah.
At least in part because of that. What you are doing is giving Kneecap the biggest free advertisement they could ever wish for. Because now all they have to do, their opening for Glastonbury now has to be a clip, a supercut of Mark Francois and Kemi Badenoch and let's say maybe, I don't know, an Israeli politician, maybe even Benjamin Netanyahu himself comes out and says something about this.
And that would go hard. If I would go to see that.
Yeah,
they've got Kneecap on stage with videos behind him with Israelis and the establishment crying their eyes out.
Just have Keir Starmer saying we don't like Kneecap are anti-British. Yeah. The crowd are going to absolutely erupt. It's Glastonbury. It's rock and roll. That's the point of it, right? It's so silly. You're investigating them under anti-terrorist legislation. You've made them overnight from minor acts that just made it onto the bill at Coachella into rock and roll terrorists. You've just made them the coolest thing you can possibly be. It's like saying you made them into pirates that were also ninjas. You made them infinitely cooler than they could ever have been without your intervention, you idiots.
I mean, I really like your comparison with the race riots, and you're getting people on Adam Brooks, political commentator, boxer on GB News. He didn't say it on GB News. He tweeted it saying, "This is what Kneecap did is disgusting." Whilst they're also saying, "But they're jailing people for tweets." And you do have to understand there is a real threat of incitement, right? When there are race riots going on out there, and you say, "Go burn down buildings with children inside them, burn politicians," whilst that's happening, and then it led to that, right? That is literally incitement. A crime came out of that, and clearly the judges thought there was a plausible link. It was a different context, but once again, I find it hypocritical for these people on the right who want to cancel Kneecap, but then say, "Oh, you get jailed for a tweet."
Well, this is the thing. The right wing for so long have gone on about cancel culture.
And the biggest ones, they love cancel culture.
Exactly. They were only ever annoyed that they weren't the ones doing the cancelling.
True, yeah.
That's it. They just wanted to be the ones that were cancelling. That's it. As soon as they get the slightest opportunity, whether it's to accuse Jeremy Corbyn of anti-Semitism, quite wrongly, or to accuse anyone else, Kneecap included, of anti-Semitism, quite wrongly, they'll do it in a heartbeat. In a second, they'll say in one breath, horrible genocidal scumbags should be allowed to speak on university campuses, but that rap group from Belfast should be banned from everything. Yeah. Like the fact, and to make the broader and I think more serious point about all of this, on the same day that Mark Francois, who by the way is an absolute clown shoe of a human being, had his emergency question or urgent question, which wasn't urgent in the slightest, but whatever, question in Parliament yesterday, talking about this, they forced the Home Office into an official statement in Parliament about this, was the day it was revealed that Britain had entered the war in Yemen. So you have politicians openly and happily joining in the bombing genocide fest in another part of the world, and yet Parliament is discussing a rap group said a thing 2 years ago. I'm sorry, to hold a West Belfast rap group to a higher moral, ethical and legal standard than your actual cabinet is ludicrous.
That is an excellent point, which we will leave that on because it's 8 o'clock already. So we are going to move on to our second story. Now, some brilliant work from our friends at Declassified UK have uncovered Lisa Nandy helping undermine the Labour Friends of Palestine group. Nandy has been happy to parrot pro-Israel propaganda, which is why many were confused as to how she was ever the chair of Labour Friends of Palestine. Well, this information adds, I think, a lot of clarity. Exclusive. insiders tell Declassified the organisation was allowed to wither and die under Lisa Nandy's stewardship. Declassified spoke with former insiders and obtained internal documents, which help explain how LFP-ME, which is Labour Friends of Palestine and Middle East, was defanged after several years as an influential lobbying force in Westminster. Though never well-resourced and always operating in a hostile political environment, LFP-ME's operations seemingly contracted under Lisa Nandy's stewardship and never fully recovered. She was simply not asked, one insider said, and allowed the organisation to wither and die. In 2009, LFP-ME met with Britain's then Foreign Secretary David Miliband, raising the issue of arms sales to Israel during Operation Cast Lead. If we don't sell them arms, someone else will, they were told. LFP-ME became a non-entity under Lisa Nandy's watch, and it hasn't recovered because of that. It was a small, dedicated team, so when they move on and Lisa Nandy takes over, and she puts no effort into any of the work or bringing on new people or new volunteers or getting anyone to do anything, then that successfully empties out the organisation, he said. Veteran Palestinian British journalist Abdul Bari Atwan, who was uninvited from a LFP-ME event following pressure from the pro-Israel lobby, was even more scathing about the organisation. This is not the Labour Friends of Palestine, it's the Labour Friends of Israel, he told Electronic Intifada in 2016. Again, I really want to praise DCUK for their work, especially on Israel's influence in the Labour Party. Kevin, look, I was confused how Nandy was ever elected to LFP, only for her to be, well, essentially pro-Israel, she is. And I think this new information makes things very clear, don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Declassified for, again, doing journalism that the journalist class of Britain have completely abrogated their duty to their readership or indeed listenership about. Yes, Lisa Nandy. I can understand why in a hostile environment, a group like Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East, because of course you need that qualifier in a way that the Labour Friends of Israel don't. Why they would want a more establishment figure as the leader. So I'm not surprised that Lisa Nandy became the leader of this organisation in order to try and garner more influence at the top end of the Labour Party. But it's clear and obvious that that was a massive mistake and that they essentially signed their own death warrant by ever even entertaining the idea. Because Lisa Nandy is a person who went on to describe themselves as a Zionist at the 2019 hustings in her own constituency. She is clearly and obviously a plant that's been placed into that position by Morgan McSweeney, as the article pretty openly states. Morgan McSweeney and the Labour Together crew, whose explicit goal was to take on Corbyn and to reclaim the Labour Party from the left. She was clearly and obviously a Zionist plant that's been put in there in order to destroy any opposition to Zionism within the Labour Party, and they've been ultimately very successful. It's another another perfect example of Zionist capture of an otherwise anti-Zionist or potentially just non-Zionist political or
that's the thing. I mean, what they are today, I don't know before, but today they're not even anti-Zionist. I mean, they praise Keir Starmer on the minimal steps of virtue signalling. So, I mean, that's probably after Lisa Nandy and the Morgan McSweeney's inside sort of hollowed it out. But right now they're pretty.
Well, they're a non-entity.
Yeah,
they're absolutely.
And they never were particularly that radical beforehand, but they had to get inside there and ruin it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the kind of clever, in a Machiavellian sense, approach that the Zionist lobby have made in the UK, because their smears against Jeremy Corbyn, one of the most high-profile pro-Palestinian activists over the course of many decades now in the UK, to smear him as anti-Semitic, by association smears everybody else who holds that position as being anti-Semitic. So inherently you're fighting an uphill battle. Just by saying you're pro-Palestine, they've put in people's minds pro-Palestine means anti-Jewish, basically. It's, or at least anti-Zionism equals anti-Jewish, which of course is disgusting and is one of the examples of racism under the definition of anti-Semitism. Adopted by the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn, bizarrely. That's what they wanted, but it happened anyway. Yeah, Lisa Nandy is one of the worst examples of a careerist in the current cabinet, which is saying something considering that cabinet is headed by not Jeremy Corbyn, by if only, no, by Keir Starmer, and indeed Foreign Secretary David Lammy as well. Really, she is one of the snakiest snakes in a group full of snakes.
I mean, at one point, she was seen as the leader of the soft left. You even had pretty big left-wing figures saying, we should give Lisa Nandy a shot. And really, I mean, I never saw the appeal from her, by the way.
Those people were idiots, yeah.
Yeah, I never saw the appeal from Lisa Nandy. I mean, I think they were enthusiastic because she kept talking about towns as if this was going to be some sort of redistribution project. I think she was just cosplaying. But I never bought into her. I didn't think she... And I don't think she has any charisma as well. I didn't see
not
it.
really.
I mean, that's the problem with the Labour Party anyway. There's a lack of charisma in there. I mean, the qualifier you mentioned, and I sort of said it in the article, right? It used to be Labour Friends of Palestine, and that was it. And then you had Labour Friends of Israel. And sneakily, you had the Labour Party, I think, whilst it was under Lisa Nandy's watch, they changed it to Palestine and Middle East. They didn't want having sort of Palestine its own group. And I feel like that's a way where you can say, well, we've got the word Palestine in the Labour Party. Clearly we care. And they can basically push out anything that's related to Palestine and just talk about the Middle East.
Yeah, basically, yeah. In a way that they don't have to for Israel.
Yeah.
Israel gets its standalone group, whereas Palestine is Palestine and the Middle East. Well, okay, so am I to take it that the Labour Friends of Israel don't give a damn about the rest of the Middle East? I mean, I don't think they do, but they probably shouldn't be so explicit about it.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's an interesting story. I mean, look, I don't think anyone's surprised about this. No one is. But I think it is, and that's why I praise DC UK so much, because you would never see something like this in the mainstream media. Absolutely not.
Well, you saw
this.
It's
so good to see it in black and white.
Yeah, you saw this when Al Jazeera did their exposure of the Zionist takedown of Jeremy Corbyn, and the British media just didn't cover it. They didn't touch it. They didn't want to go near it because, of course, they were at best willing but unknowing dupes of that arrangement, or they were its active agents. And either way, they didn't want any part of it, so they just ignored it. And the same will be true of this, of course. And yet again, it's just another example of the Zionist cancer eating away at the British body politic.
Completely well said. Well said. Okay, let's move on. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you're enjoying the show, then please like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. And note that we have 336 concurrent viewers across YouTube and Twitter, 175 on Twitter. So if you're on there watching, hello. It's pretty good. Now, if you want to see us grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or you can follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. And remember, I say this every week, every single time, we are a voluntary group. There's 5 of us. We don't get paid for this. We have a very small budget to pay for certain things like transport. And already, your money has been incredible. We've managed to go down to rallies. We've managed to do interviews and vox pops. And we couldn't do that without you. But obviously, our goal is to become full-time. And this is our full-time jobs. And we are going to get there. Maybe slow, but we're definitely going to get there. But I just want to thank everyone who has supported us. And if you can't afford it, please don't feel like you have to give. Just watch, just like and share our stuff. That is enough. But I think let's move on to our final story. An Israeli official said the quiet parts out loud and admitted that Joe Biden never once asked or pressured Israel for a ceasefire as president. God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was the president during this period. We fought in Gaza for over a year, and the administration never came to us and said, ceasefire now. It never did, and that's not to be taken for granted. That's former Israeli ambassador Michael Herzog. A sweeping Israeli Channel 13 investigation has exposed the Biden's administration complicity in Israel's 90-month war on Gaza. 9 top Biden officials acknowledged avoiding real pressure on Israel, even as the death toll surpassed 30,000. Israeli leaders openly bragged they dragged out the war, playing for time until Donald Trump's return. Now, the investigation revealed how much the US was complicit in a genocide, as Middle East Monitor puts it. The investigation, which included interviews with 9 current and former US officials, reveals a deeply troubled portrait of US complicity in Israel's genocide in Gaza. Former National Security aide Ilan Goldenberg stated that the war amounted to killing and destroying for the sake of killing and destroying, with no viable political alternative ever established. Despite the White House's public messaging about restraining Israel, the internal consensus appeared to be that the administration had no intention of exerting real pressure on the occupation state. Now, none of us are surprised of the West's complicity, right? This information doesn't surprise us too. But we were told by the Democrats and by Biden, they wanted peace. They worked so hard for a ceasefire. That was the number one aim. Turns out they did sweet FA. Kevin, I know you're not surprised either, but I do want to get your response.
The Joe Biden should be remembered for time and eternity as, to quote a great poem, a fixed statue on the pedestal of scorn. Mm-hmm. He should be remembered forever as a genocidal maniac who had the blood of tens of thousands on his hands. As much as I didn't want Donald Trump to win, I thought it was ethically okay to suggest that Joe Biden deserved to lose, because this was so obvious that this is what he was doing. This man had always been a Zionist, quite openly, but I didn't think it would be as bad when he first got elected. Yeah. But clearly he was just, the statement from Herzog saying that they were playing for time until Trump's return, what difference did it make? Ultimately, what difference did it make at all? Biden was exerting no pressure on them to do anything, so they didn't need to hang on for any change of administration, because they were getting everything they wanted anyway, without any pushback whatsoever. It's disgusting. And the Democrats need to learn from this, because, as you saw, younger people are not going to vote for your genocidal nonsense. They're just not going to. They'll stay at home. They don't want to vote for the weird fashy alternatives, but you're not offering them any reason to vote for you when this is what you offer. You're offering them nothing economically. You're offering them very little socially. And in terms of foreign policy, it's Israel, Israel, Israel. That's it. Again, it's another example of the cancerous tumor of Zionism eating away at another Western body politic. They've completely undermined any semblance of pushback against genocide, not even just against war, against open and obvious genocide. The bombing consistently of religious institutions, of church, of hospitals, the purposeful demolition of the National Parliamentary Assembly building in Gaza City. So they can't be any alternative to Hamas, because where the hell would they even meet to congregate to form a government, for God's sake? Like, they have consistently shown that they will operate safe zones, and then bomb the safe zones. They have killed, God knows how many British citizens, and the British government have just actively acquiesced in the covering up and whitewashing of those crimes. Palestine right now is the most dangerous place in the world to be a child or a journalist. The fact that those two things is true is pretty obvious and indicative of the fact that they are engaging in direct targeting of those groups.
So I want to say, hats off to Louis Theroux. Right. By the way, he is a national treasure, but he risked his life, by the way, going there. And that's someone who actually has integrity at the BBC. Maybe the last person ever, which is also funny because I think, and a lot of people made this point, if this was a Muslim or a brown person making this documentary, there would be this big pushback that this person is Hamas, right? And don't get me wrong, we've heard the crazy excuses and we've heard the smears against Louis Theroux, but Louis Theroux is a respected journalist. And you're going to need to try a little bit harder to discredit him. But back to the Democrats, right? There was this idea that we knew that materially on policy, when it comes to Israel, there won't be much difference, right? At least when it comes to arms sales. Now, I wholeheartedly believe, and I think I have been vindicated, that the Republicans and Trump are far worse on this issue than Joe Biden. But there was this idea that, okay, the Democrats are still selling weapons to Israel, but they're at least behind the scenes going to, try and push for some kind of ceasefire. That was like the narrative that was spun. They didn't even do that. Joe Biden didn't even get off his arse. I mean, he was so old. Hobble over to Netanyahu and say, ceasefire, please. Didn't even ask.
Well, I would practically argue that I don't think there is realistically any difference. The difference,
You're probably right.
Unfortunately,
You're probably right.
is true with Trump, is that Trump is more stupidly explicit.
True.
He ultimately, Biden was never going to come out and say we need to build a Riviera on the coast of what was the Gaza Strip, but ultimately he was going to allow Israel to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So realistically, what is the difference? What has been the difference? It's just that Trump is not good enough at lying to be able to hide it in a way that Joe Biden clearly was, and that basically generations, up until, bizarrely, the last American president to ever really push back was Ronald Reagan, of all people. So for 40-odd years now, we've had generations of American leaders who have offered no realistic pushback to Israel whatsoever. It's just that they've all been, relatively competent liars in a way that Donald Trump is not. Donald Trump is just a wind-up toy that you just wind up and it just goes off and says stupid, absurd things.
Yeah.
But ultimately is serving the same function, and is allowing the same genocide to take place at basically the same rate it already was. Like I said, there was no need to hang on for Donald Trump's presidency, because they were getting everything they wanted anyway. What pushback was being offered by Joe Biden? None. Ultimately, if they'd gone through that process and Joe Biden still wasn't pushing back, then nothing they could ever have done would ever have caused him to push it back.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, first we had 4 years to do it, but what point would have that gone too far? And we know at time and time again, it was, well, if they do this, then we're going to call them out. If they go into Rafah, then we're going to call them out. And it ultimately doesn't happen. And to be honest, you're probably right. They're on policy when it comes to Israel-Palestine. What is the difference between the Democrats and Republicans? Because if Donald Trump says we're going to build a Riviera in Gaza, right? An outrageous thing to say, but that is him saying something which Joe Biden wouldn't say. But if Israel pushed for that, what's to say that Joe Biden wouldn't let it happen? I mean, he didn't ask for a ceasefire in 4 years. Yeah. So materially, they are probably identical. I almost stand corrected a little bit. I think maybe on domestic issues and social issues in the country, there's a big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. But in foreign policy in Israel, because you're right. Because Trump he's almost too honest for his own good in a way. Like, he's not an honest guy, by the way. He is a liar. But sometimes he says the quiet part out loud because he's nuts. And
it's not honesty.
His advisors have to go like, we'll have to put out a statement and rectify that, Yeah,
it's not honesty, it's idiocy.
Idiocy.
It's that everyone else has a filter because they're grown-ups and they know that there are certain things you're not supposed to say in public, whereas he doesn't have that because he's been rich enough that he's never needed to ever modify any behavioural tick whatsoever. So he can just go out and say, we're going to build a Riviera. I want a Trump golf course on what used to be Rafah. He can say whatever the hell he likes, and they'll just get away with it. It's fine. It doesn't matter, because he's got so much money and so much power that it doesn't matter. And really, Joe Biden could probably have said it as well. It's just that Joe Biden was too out of his fucking head to have ever known it.
Oh, he had his little blip. He didn't mean to say that. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, exactly. It's so infuriating because ultimately it just goes to show you, and it's not. It shouldn't be remotely surprising to anyone because the same groups of people all have to grovel before AIPAC.
Yeah,
all of them, be them Democrat or Republican or anyone else. You only ever get into American political.
I mean, you want to talk about cancer
because of cancer.
AIPAC is literally cancer. I mean,
AIPAC, along with Labour, Friends of Israel, and God knows who else, need to be investigated for the obvious foreign power agents that they are. They are undoubtedly spying.
Oh, but that's okay, though. It's fine. It's not Russia who are...
They are doing espionage on behalf of a foreign government and undermining the democracies. Again, to go back to Kneecap, one of the things that was constantly said was, to say kill your local MP, it's undermining democracy. I'm sorry, you're all bought and paid for shills of Zionism. Don't tell me about the undermining of democracy. Your very existence in that chamber is an undermining of democracy.
I mean, there's UK, US, wherever. There's no vote on our policy in Israel, Palestine, or even any foreign policy. First, we'd delegate all our foreign policy to Washington, but where's the vote on that? I mean,
Well,
I don't want to vote for someone who doesn't want to. Sorry, go on.
Where was the vote on us starting to bomb Yemen?
Exactly. Right?
That's
But
just
I would like to have a vote on whether we bomb innocent children in Palestine and babies, but of course you ain't going to get a vote on that.
You get daily flights, daily reconnaissance flights from Maria Fakratiri in Cyprus every single day.
Yeah.
We've been aiding and abetting this genocide every day for the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And not a single vote. In fact, virtually not a single peep out of any of these so-called guardians of democracy and the mother of all parliaments. What a joke.
And look, it's even affecting progressive politicians. AOC, someone I quite like actually, was asked about this, before the story came out, and she said, Kamala Harris is doing her best to get a ceasefire. Now, I don't know if she's being naive or she knew that and she just was so scared about Trump that she just wanted people to vote for Democrats. But, AOC saying, they're working their hardest to get a ceasefire. Well, they're actually not.
They weren't. And she knew they weren't. Like, she was inside this, And
again, I admire and respect AOC, but it's not just the right-wing politicians. It affects our leftist politicians too. I think Bernie Sanders, I think he's fantastic, but let's not pretend that he's not exactly very good on... he still won't... They're both
rubbish on Israel. They just are.
Yeah.
They've said some mildly good stuff. They'll come out and say, I don't think all Palestinians should be killed.
Yeah.
That's about it. It's some milquetoast
But it just
nonsense.
says that's the best America's going to get right.
Realistically,
that's the
best.
Really
that's the best you can get without falling out of a window. Let's say.
Yeah.
Or being found to have Epsteined yourself, so to speak, in a prison cell, perhaps.
Well, for what it's worth, though, if I was in America, right, I absolutely would rather Bernie Sanders as president.
100%.
Than many other people. I think a lot of people know that. But yeah, I think it goes to show that even the politicians we like, at least in America, when it comes to Israel, it's so powerful that they are... I don't know if they're wrapped up in the ideology or they're just simply so scared. I think more for AOC, she's more like, I can't be controversial on this because it really is a red line in the establishment.
It's I think a combination of things depending on exactly who's being referred to. I think there are some people who are bought and paid for shills.
Yeah.
I think there are some people who are scared of the backlash, like you say with AOC, who clearly has ambitions beyond her current status to become something much
larger. I would like her to be far higher up in the DNC.
I hope she becomes president someday. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely, but it would be good. Or at least better than the current crop of absolute nonsense. And there are some people who we know have been honeypotted in one form or another. People who have dirt on them, who have compromat on them, who that is being used against them. They're being essentially blackmailed by the State of Israel into, at the very least, silence, if not acquiescence and support of things that they don't agree with and don't actually like, but for their own grubby self-interest are prepared to do so in order to keep that information under wraps.
Absolutely. 8:25. I think we are going to go to our comments. Look, it's been a very successful stream. We've had 155 concurrent viewers on YouTube.
Heck yes.
211 on Twitter. So I'm assuming it's going to be very busy in the chat. We've got Cog with us.
We do.
Yes.
Can you all hear me? Am I audible to you and Kevin, first of all?
I can hear you, yeah.
No, I can't hear you. That's a joke, because I'm lying to you.
We'll believe it, because our tech issues is wild on the channel. So, no, it's going so well.
Oh, okay. Cool. So let's get the donos involved first. So, let's see.
We're all about the Benjamins, baby. Let's go.
So, we have...
Well, I saw you repping the merch down in London, Curtis. Honestly, I like a good company, man. It's good to say.
Yeah, thank you.
So was Callum, I think. Callum was wearing...
Callum had a turn left t-shirt on there as well, and hopefully rolling it out to the good people of the public.
Nice.
Specs being Farmer gifted 5 turn left memberships.
Specs. Always amazing. There, day job gang.
Yeah, literally. And we've got Guitar Guy who became a member. Good stuff.
Welcome to Turn Left.
And I've got to read this one out. Okay. Baron von Cockslap gifted 5 turn left memberships.
I apologise for leading degenerate filth.
That is. It's a legendary name, isn't it? Thank you, Baron von
Incredible.
Cockslap.
And Anya also gifted a turn left membership, and we
Thank you,
appreciate
Anya.
you very
Really
much.
appreciate
Anya.
it. Thank you so much.
You are absolutely fantastic, and thank you for having a name that doesn't contain any smut. Right.
Could be worse. I once had someone called Joseph Stalin's Cock and Ball Torture Emporium.
This is the real left, right? This
Exactly. This is the future the left want.
It's shitposting left. That's what we want. None of this professional crap.
Dark woke. Let's go.
Dark woke.
Dark woke. Absolutely here for it.
There's a reason that we're dark woke. It's because, according to Stanley, Jezza was Kneecap's manager. There is no end to this man's skill set. We couldn't agree
Petition
more.
to make that happen.
No, people don't know. There's a reason that one of their members wears a balaclava.
Oh,
Have you
yes!
seen them in the same room
Corbyn.
together?
Corbyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen Corbyn and the guy in the balaclava in the same room
That
together.
photo we showed earlier was literally Photoshop. So
Yeah. True. And Specs Bean Farmer says, "This is why I love Turn Left: facts, news, and homoeroticism." Thanks, guys.
I consider homoeroticism to be part of facts. They're
it all sort of
indistinguishable.
blends
to me.
in together, doesn't it? You know, maybe we should get a Turn Left T-shirt. Homoeroticism.
It's just set theory. All homoeroticism is fact, but not all fact is homoeroticism.
Oh, yes. So Edward put this comment, which is, wow, because censorship never actually makes a band more popular and spreads interest in their music, right? Moreover, this is seriously authoritarian in the scope of what it's called for, kind of leaning into what you said, but Edward said it a little bit before you guys got to it.
It's absolutely. Like I made the point on my show yesterday. Like, whether it's the gyrating hips of Elvis Presley or the kind of drug taking of the hippie period or the kind of anarchy in the UK aesthetic of the punks or the fuck you, I won't do what you tell me of Rage Against the Machine, rock and roll has always been, to some extent, about being anti-authority and being anti-establishment.
Sure. Yeah.
It's about cultural, sometimes referred to wrongly, I think, as cultural, as generational terrorism. The idea that a generation always combats the previous generations and wants to culturally separate itself. So the worst thing those generations preceding them can do is make them make that separation themselves, because you turn people on to that. There are people now who will have listened to Kneecap's music who never would have even heard of them 2 weeks ago. They're going to buy tickets for their shows. They're going to buy albums. They're going to do this, that, and the other. You make it infinitely more popular if you try and censor it. Like, you must know this. Like, even I got to give him the credit. He's an evil bastard. The Home Office minister who answered Mark Francois literally said, "I won't use the name of the band because I don't want to give them free advertising. Maybe the right honourable member opposite should think about that." And Mark Francois looked chastened, because I don't think he'd even considered that thought. I don't think it'd enter his fucking stupid gammon mind, such that you can be described as a mind, that would, the Streisand effect even exists. And yet he's made them infinitely more popular. He just has.
You know what
if you're going to investigate them as terrorists, you make them sound cool and edgy as fuck.
I mean, this reminds me of what happened in America when Nike went woke with Colin Kaepernick, and then all the conservatives were buying Nike shoes and then burning it, and it was like their sales went up. It was almost as if it was a psyops campaign by Nike, which could be plausible.
I literally said, the people doing this, look, the Kneecap don't need PR.
I don't need it.
Because the counter-terrorism police and Mark Francois and Sharon Osbourne are doing it for them.
Yep.
They're getting headline. They couldn't have purchased this level of advertisement. No. You cannot buy this kind of advertisement. You've made them seem so much cooler than they could ever have been. Like, it's so counterproductive. 100%. And I'm here for it, because I think their messaging is generally very good. Also, just on I forgot to even mention it, the thing about the 14 grand that they got in public subsidy, they gave every penny of that to two groups, cross-sectarian groups in Northern Ireland, to help bridge the gap. Like, they didn't take a penny of it for themselves. So it's not even as if they were financially benefiting from it. Again, what they were doing was getting free advertisement on behalf of the British government, you dickheads. Yeah, take them to court. Because if there's one thing that rock and roll stars don't like, it's being taken to government court by the government, because that makes them seem really bad, and people don't like that. Shut up.
Shut up.
Yeah, it is a losing strategy.
It really is. It's so stupid. Like, when has censorship ever helped the side trying to censor?
Yeah.
Rarely. Very rarely.
Yes, it's rare, especially when you're dealing with artists.
Well, exactly. Unless you, well, I don't want to give Keir Starmer any ideas, but unless you ally it with extreme violence, literally killing them, although then you just create martyrs, I guess. But either way, like, you know.
To be fair, though, if Kneecap started murdering children, they probably would get some support from the government, because they seem to support these kinds of people, don't they?
I was about to say, it's interesting that members of the IDF that are British citizens don't get arrested when they've actually killed people.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. I just thought it was worth bringing this this quote up from Jacqueline, because I think she's absolutely right. When Labour lose loads of council seats tomorrow, they'll have no one to blame but Keir Starmer and the pathetic bunch of arsewipes he picked to be his cabinet. I completely agree.
No, it's Kneecap. Kneecap did it.
Yeah.
See, we're on to a big election win, and the Kneecap got behind us and ruined it for us.
Ironically, they were kneecapped.
They were kneecapped. They were kneecapped by their own political agenda, which is genocide, which is social conservatism, and neoliberalism.
Yeah,
all
they give
things that are not actually that popular. I mean, even when it comes to, I know when it comes to transphobia broadly, people are actually pro-trans. So their social conservatism is not like there's a big constituency for them.
Yeah.
They're like on the wrong side of every single possible issue.
Yeah, exactly. You give no Labour voter has any reason to vote for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yes. It's all down now to you just like the colour red. That's about it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because I did say this actually at the time of the election. I said, vote Labour if you want to. I wouldn't advise it. Vote Labour if you want to, but you're effectively putting a tick or an X next to a big question mark, because you don't know what they are going to look like in 6 months' time. Nobody knows what they are going to look like in 6 months' time. And I was saying this.
To be fair, Keir Starmer didn't either, because Morgan McSweeney hadn't told him.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Like, that's just it. Like, they lie so often that I'm honestly surprised that they have an idea of what they're sort of going for in the future. It's really hard to tell. But one thing's for sure, as Andrew Wilton said, she was there to do the only thing, she being Lisa Nandy, she was there to do the only thing this Labour government can do, ruin it. And I do think there is a degree to which this Labour government has been very good at destroying things, but not good at building things that are lasting.
I mean, at least they're good at something, I suppose. At least we can say that. They've got a skill, and that is absolutely destroying everything. Well done.
Including Gaza.
Including Gaza.
Yes, including Gaza. And Helmhurst, just to emphasise the point, said never voting Labour under Starver. Never.
You're not that
Tory
person
enabler. You're a Tory enabler.
You're that person who was door knocked, were you, on TV, and you said, "Go away! I'm voting Green unless it's Zara Sultana." That's not you, is it?
No, but I suspect that person speaks for a lot of people.
Well, I thought it was very funny because there's this very Labour right account, and it said, well, if Zara Sultana was leader, she'd win one vote to every 200 vote loss, and it's like, you can't really say that right now because Keir Starmer's losing votes everywhere. I don't think I would take the electoral angle right now because they are pissing everyone off.
I was about to say, the old joke that James O'Brien, that anyone else right now would be 20 points clear, except of course that Keir Starmer has basically only got 20 points right now. So he's 20 points ahead of me, and I'm not standing.
Yeah, any other leader would probably be on 30%, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
I do think we've got to be ready for if Reform win big tomorrow. For the centrists to turn around to us and go, and to the Greens, to the Lib Dems, to any other sort of party that's even vaguely left wing, and go, well, if you hadn't split the vote, then we'd have, we'd have got in, and you allowed
They're
reform
going to
to get
say
in.
that anyway.
So yeah, exactly.
And
So the
they
same
are going to
excuse
say
they
that
have
anyway.
every single time. Yeah, I mean
we've got to, we've got to be strong in our response, which has to be no, fuck you. We're going to keep denying you every single seat. We will split the vote every single time until
don't-
you start playing ball with us.
Well, I don't see it as splitting the vote because they're not a left-wing party.
yeah.
This is true. Yeah. I suppose
Look,
it's
the
not
actual
splitting the vote,
centre-left vote, really. I mean, if you want to be very generous to include the Lib Dems on that, is essentially the Lib Dems, the Greens, and in Scotland the SNP. Like the media still lumping in the Labour Party as centre-left, right? They are not. They ceased to be centre-left when Keir Starmer became leader. They are a firmly centre-right party, and in some places within it, solidly right-wing.
Yeah,
So I don't
this
accept the framing
nonsense
that is
of
splitting the vote, because you're splitting the right-wing vote, not the left-wing
That's
vote.
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
this stuff about like league tables of migrant crime.
Yeah,
It's like some
what's centre-left
BNP
about
shit.
that, you know?
The fuck?
I mean, what's
They're not
centre-left about
left-wing.
cutting benefits?
Yeah.
Disability
I agree, yeah.
benefits, might I say. So, of course, that's the way the media will do it. And obviously the detractors will say the same thing. Well, if the Greens and Lib Dems hadn't fucked it up for us. I'm sorry, but, like, that's democracy. If you're doing a bad job, right, and someone outflanks you to the left and wins votes based on it, you're not supposed to blame these people. You're supposed to, go to the left. I read this really interesting article that looked at the polling data, right? And it basically proved what we suspected, all right? And it basically played down the Labour to Reform vote, right? There's been a lot of speak about Labour losing votes to Reform. 80% are all ex-Tory voters, right? Only a small amount are going from Labour to Reform. Overwhelming majority of those that leave in Labour are going to the Greens and the Lib Dems. So the Labour Party pivoting to the right, publishing league tables, for example, saying they're going to be tough on immigration, they're chasing an invisible tail, because the votes they need back are those voting Lib Dems and Greens. And they're not going to go and vote Labour based on this. It's
see
an
it every
invisible
time.
tail.
Every time they come out with a new right-wing policy, you get right-wingers going, "Oh, you're still a traitor, piece of shit. I'm never voting for you."
Literally.
You're
Absolutely.
chasing people who hate you and will never vote for you over people who would vote for you, even if they don't like you, just to stop Tories/Reform.
Yeah. Look, I've made this point so many times. Regardless of Labour's position on immigration, broadly they will be seen as a pro-immigrant party, right? So they have a choice. Either try and say, oh, no, we hate immigrants too, and then not win any votes, or actually make a positive case for immigration. Because if most of their votes aren't going to Reform, they're going to the left, then maybe they can bring them back. Like, I think, and this is what Ambrosani said actually when he went down to Runcorn, and he made a really good point, because he spoke to a woman who's voted Conservative her entire life, voted Labour in July. Within weeks, she said she regretted it. And this is the type of voter that Morgan McSweeney and the Labour right wanted. They desperately wanted these Tory voters, these swing voters, right? They desperately wanted them, and they've alienated them as well. So there's literally no one is going to come out and vote Labour. They've already alienated these so-called Tory swing votes, which, by the way, I massively reject. If you look at the numbers, Labour got, over 9 million votes, less than Jeremy Corbyn both 2017 and 2019. All of it is going towards the left. So I think you have to sort of expand your base outwards, right? Of course, you need to compromise to win an election, but you can't shit on your base, reach over the aisle, and win that way, because you still need your own base.
Yeah.
It won't work otherwise. You need your base plus the swing voters, not say to your base, fuck off, and then go for the swing voters, because your base are still your core support. And when that shrinks, you're never going to win.
You know who they could have learned from? The Lib Dems. The Lib Dems have poisoned their image for a generation by supporting the increasing tuition fees after joining the coalition. And Labour could have looked at that and gone, hey, maybe we don't want our base to absolutely hate us, or our former base now to absolutely hate us for a generation. Because even now, it's been like 15 years since that happened, and even now, people still say you can't trust a Lib Dem. I think they're right, by the way, but they still say you can't trust a Lib Dem because they will turn on it. The image of the party has been poisoned, and I think that might well happen to Labour now. Labour might have poisoned the chalice both ways because, that, like you say, they're not going to persuade people that they're anti-immigration. Those people are going to vote Reform or for the Conservatives anyway. And then now they're going to lose the people who would have supported them. They're poisoning their own chalice, and then swinging it down. It's absolutely mad. And it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, as Shiny Warm says. My new Labour MP has just said she joined Labour Friends of Palestine in the Middle East, but in response to my emails, she hasn't answered my questions about ending arms sales to Israel, BDS, or RAF surveillance flights. It puts a dark shadow over the whole party, really.
I mean, I think we're in a seismic political shift where, when the Labour Party took over the Liberals in the early 20th century, we're in a seismic shift now where it's very likely Labour can't win an election ever again.
Yes, they're looking at having the political success of the Whigs in the next few years. The same political success that the Whigs have had in the 21st century, which is none. Anya says Zionism is religious extremism. This is paired with another comment, by the way. Just the same as Islamic extremism, Labour and the right are so against. And then Jim Speak followed up by saying, it's not really a religious doctrine. It's just appropriating religion like Machiavelli would have. I just wanted to comment on this quickly. I'll pass it over to you guys in a second. But I would say that you are both right to some degree. I would say that it is religious, but religious extremism, because ultimately a lot of Islamic extremism, Wahhabism, is largely political anyway. It's largely not to do with like doctrinal faith. And much more to do with what you can get people to do with a devotion to religion and their focus on religion. It's an excuse rather than an actual dedication to religion. I don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu prays much. I'll put it that way.
No, I think that's true. I think there are a lot of people who are. I mean, you can be an atheist and a Zionist. You can be a Christian and a Zionist. Most Zionists are Christians.
I was going to say most Zionists are Christians. I think it's. I think both is true because, look, I think and I'm not accusing this person of being a liberal, by the way, but the very liberal worldview is that the material conditions don't matter. It's all about ideas, and I think when you say everything's down to religion, and that enforces human behavior without looking at the conditions they're living in, the geopolitics of things, then I don't think that really answers the question or opens up what's really happening here. Like, religious extremism doesn't happen in a vacuum. So I do think, like, obviously religion can help push people to certain sort of views and actions, but a lot of it is also used as an excuse. I don't think it's either one or the other. It's not black and white. I think both are kind of true. But, I think that way of thinking could then say, well, there are billions of Muslims, and then, okay, but most Muslims don't subscribe to the ultra conservative ideals in Islam, same as Christians. The politics behind it is, I think, the driving force.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that this is one of these things where you can answer quickly. I think it's these are sort of discussions you will have your entire life, and really interesting discussions.
Yeah, it's about the politics, because America doesn't give a shit about any particular political ideology than its own, and it doesn't care about Jewish people for damn sure. It supports Israel because Israel is essentially a military base in a region that they have no friends in.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that spiritually, for a lot of them anyway, are spiritually Zionists or religiously Zionist. It is because Israel is a settler colonial project, and of course, US is a Western imperialism entity, and it's very material. I mean, having Israel in the Middle East is very beneficial to the West. It was why it was created in the first place. If you read the Balfour Declaration, a lot of it is to the fact that they just wanted Western influence in the region. And then actually, I think Britain cynically used a lot of Jewish people and their faith to get on board with it.
Actually, Balfour's a really good connection between why the Irish Republican cause and the Palestinian cause are so well interlinked.
Yeah.
There's a history of oppression that goes back even further than Balfour, but Balfour was one of the big things because Balfour was the foreign secretary who both sent the Black and Tans into Ireland to essentially kill with impunity and torture with impunity Catholics, and then when they were eventually driven out, sent the same group of people to do the same in Israel/Palestine.
Yeah.
And then obviously give quote unquote Israel to Zionism. And so there is a direct historical connection and a kind of kinship between the Palestinian and Irish peoples.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I thought this was interesting. Shannon says, Nandy came to my town to support our Labour candidate. The fact he willingly associated with her adds to my ever-growing dislike for him. The leadership of the party is poisoning the party. I think I can't remember who it was who made the point that Keir Starmer is really the root of why that lady. I can't remember what she said exactly. She said she would vote for Zara Sultana, but wouldn't vote for.
I mean, the fish rots from the head.
The fish.
Yeah, to quote one of the great political theorists of our time. Yeah,
treating. I do wonder though, how much does a candidate get a say in like a cabinet member coming down or leadership coming down? I'm assuming it's not to excuse anything for.
I imagine.
I don't think you should. If you had good politics, you wouldn't be in. You wouldn't even be inside the Labour Party. But I do wonder how much of a top-down that thing is. You know.
Oh, well, I mean, any normal situation would allow for a local candidate to be able to read the local situation and say, "Don't send Lisa Nandy," or "Don't send
she's hated
X, Y, or Z person." Send someone like, and usually it's to do with like region or whatever. Like, realistically, they send Scottish MPs to go and do Scottish stuff because Scottish people want to hear Scottish people. They don't want to hear Jacob Rees-Mogg go to Dundee. Like no one wants that. And so if Lisa Nandy, so if you're someone from the northwest of England, Lisa Nandy would make sense. But she's also hated. Yeah. So send someone else from the northeast. Like you've got loads of MPs from there, you could send anyone. Yeah, but because we know it's top down and we know that the Starmer Politburo, which really should be named the McSweeney Politburo, because Starmer is as much a supplicant to it than any sort of leader of it. They dictate from the top. They parachute people in. I know that because my own Labour MP is some random Cockney lad who's never been to the seat before he was parachuted in last year. Some ex-army wanker who's done nothing. Anyway, they parachute these people in there, so they probably don't have any local knowledge or local say in the matter. They just Lisa Nandy's turning up tough shit. You know
the big thing that made a difference when we were door knocking during the Corbyn campaign, and the thing that made a lot of difference was every now and again, obviously not every time, but every now and again we'd get some reasonably big left-wing media figure come along, people like Owen Jones, Ashkar, I think Aaron Bastani went on a few, but every now and again we'd have someone come along who people recognized and was fighting the fight in the media as well, but who would Labour pull out for that? Who have they got?
Where's motherfucking Streeting?
Just where's Streeting?
Labour Social.
Labour Social.
Brutansky. Yes.
But even I don't think Tan would come out.
No, she's not. Actually technically she's left the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is absolutely wild how they have they've just lost their the kind of people who you need to make you popular.
I wonder if all the celebrities, right, that batted for Labour in the general election, I wonder how many of them still actually support Labour. I mean, don't get me wrong. What was it? There was is it Dawn French? And this is when Keir Starmer was running for leader, to be fair, and she backed him, right? But I do wonder. I think there's a particular group of people who were like, I didn't think Labour would be this bad. And of course, we were like, Labour are terrible, right? Because we know, and to be fair to us, right, we're political nerds. We live and breathe politics. We know the internal machinations of the Labour Party. We know the people involved. We can say everything that's happened we predicted, right? But we were privy to a lot of information because we read it every single day. And so many people are like, oh, the Labour Party, they're just the more of the equality party. They're the nicer party than the Tories, right? So I get it when someone's not that political might back Labour at that time. But what are we, 9 months into? Not even that, right? I wonder how many people are still supporting Labour.
I wouldn't know. Is Tony Robinson still supporting Labour?
Oh, God, that video when he's like, oh, God.
Vote change.
The TikTok videos, like lights everywhere, and he's dancing to the polling station, like, vote for change.
Well, if Baldrick says so, it must be true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Who's the guy with the hat? The
Scouse lad.
No, the politics social guy with the hat and the island.
Yeah, is it Graham? No,
Graham something.
Yeah, it's Scouser. Yeah.
He was a Lib Dem for ages, by the way.
Yeah, him. Because he supported Labour throughout the last election. Absolutely fine, whatever. But it's interesting to me that if you look through his recent content, it is absolutely scathing of the way that Keir Starmer's turned on trans people. Even like the people who've like stuck with them through the election and their previous set of like outrageous lies will not stick with them forever. Like, I don't know where they're gonna go with this.
Well, that's the thing. I can see people like him. Apparently Phil Morehouse has left the Labour Party. I thought he'd stay with Labour through thick and thin, right? But I think when it comes to that, these people I personally don't think they aren't that interested in material analysis, right? So when it comes to economic policies, they swing to the right, you're still going to get these people back Labour. But when it comes to their assault on trans people, it's very social liberalism as well, isn't it? Like if you support trans people but don't support, redistribution of wealth, you're kind of a liberal. And I think to people that switched them off, they're like, well, I'm happy to uphold this economic system, but can we not throw trans people under the bus? And now Labour are doing that. You're going to get the sort of liberals who might turn away from Labour. And do you know what? I'm glad they're turning away from Labour. Once again, shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
They're not winning any voters with Wes Streeting, having conversations with Baywater, the group that has been linked to conversion therapy, saying that it is actually now wrong to call trans man a man and trans woman a woman, despite him saying it before. You're not winning any people over.
Yeah, because the Turks are just going to bring up the clips of you saying that in the past.
Yeah, they're like, well, we don't believe you. That's the thing, right? Do these people not grasp, right, that trust is a very important thing in politics? It's not just about what you say, right? When Labour have literally said, we agree with the Supreme Court ruling, right, we're going to identify people with their sex at birth, right, the gender at birth, you're still getting people in Runcorn saying, I'm voting reform because I know what a woman is, right? You're not changing any minds. What you are doing, though, is if you're someone who supports trans people or you're trans yourself, who was thinking about voting Labour, they're going to be like, well, fuck that, I'm not voting Labour. Do they not understand just basic politics?
No, because what they've done is taken for granted that those votes have nowhere to go. Except, of course, they now do, but they just think they can just take that shit for granted in the very Blair right way.
Nowhere else to go, as Peter Mandelson said. Well, actually, they do, and they are.
Like you going to, like you, Peter Mandelson, going to Epstein's birthday.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. Yeah, he's just the British ambassador to the United States now. That's cool. Awesome.
I guess you could say the same about the immigration stuff as well.
Yeah.
The problem is that it even pushes the sort of people who don't necessarily do material analysis, away, because it's just so obviously demonic.
Yeah,
that it's like something, publishing migrant crime statistics is it is something like you'd expect, like Lex Luthor to do, hacking the big screens in New York to project migrant crime.
And you're still,
data
sorry to cut you off, though, you're still getting
go.
people on GB News saying, and they literally, when I went on last week, the slot before me, the panel was literally saying Labour cares more about immigrants than British people. Right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Obviously, that's a load of crap, but they're still pushing that narrative, despite the fact that Labour have pivoted to the right on immigration. they could bring immigration down by 50%, and you're still going to get knuckleheads saying they care about immigrants and immigrants are getting free houses, right? So
It's almost like it's a wedge issue and that they
it's
don't
almost
actually
like it's
really
a wedge
care.
issue that even these people on TV do not give a fuck about. They're still going to bat a label of it because people are going to believe it, which is why I say you might as well come out and just be pro-immigration because you're not winning people over, but you might keep
Well,
some
you
of your
saw you,
base voters.
you saw it with. I think the Canadian election is one to look at.
Yeah,
The difference
very
with the Canadian
interesting,
and American one. Firstly, funny that Poilievre literally didn't become prime minister and lost his seat. Hilarious, but like he didn't try and sell out at least socially liberal, socially left wing people. He just went, "Oh, okay, if you want to call me woke, whatever, fine," and went on with it. And Carney won pretty convincingly in the end, albeit not a majority, but that's quite difficult to obtain given the situation. Whereas in America, she literally went out and campaigned with Liz Cheney. She went as right wing as any candidate has been in a long time in that stupid fucking bipartisan sense, and they still called her a communist.
Yeah.
So
Obama's called a
why
communist.
give a fuck what they have to say?
Yeah.
They're calling Keir Starmer a communist.
Why
like, it
shout
doesn't
down
matter.
Palestinian protesters with "I'm speaking"? Okay, well they're not fucking voting for you then.
Yeah.
Be a dickhead.
Keir Starmer could literally dethrone
And Labour Party are
Charles
just
II.
they're doing
Charles
that on
second, Charles III. Like Keir Starmer could literally dethrone Charles III and replace him with Jeff Bezos, and GB News would still be on the next day calling Keir Starmer a communist.
Yeah.
They would.
Yeah, they would.
Like, it's
I mean,
mad.
I've seen it. If Jeff Bezos endorsed the Labour Party, they called Jeff Bezos a communist.
Do you
And
know
I've
Jeff
seen
Bezos
that, not
is
specifically in Labour's context, but I've literally seen people online call bankers communists because they didn't particularly side with the far right party. They were like, I'm going to stay with the Liberal Party because they're going to have my economic interests, but they're not so radically right wing. And they're like, well, they're communists. So
I had to bring this one up.
Publish
Not just because it's a dono, but also true. Come on, publish.
Thank you for the donation. But
all I'll
that
say
is a
is
fire comment. Yeah,
a lot of sexual assaults in that particular crime stat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Cyberscape City, I thought this was interesting, said support the revival of the 1956 precedent, which bypasses the Security Council veto for a democratic UN emergency peacekeeping force through the General Assembly. Currently, peacekeeping is under review. This is a mechanism that I ran across before. It's supposed to be like a unity mechanism that the General Assembly are afforded to intervene when the Security Council basically go nuts. Because of course this was during the rise of it's about would have been 5 or 6 years after the Soviet Union got nuclear weapons as well. So there was a heavy interest at the time in making sure that the Security Council didn't lead to a situation where they were going to go to war and the General Assembly could do nothing about it. I do think maybe there's something to that, but there's a practical point of that peacekeepers are overwhelmingly made up of American forces just because the amount America spends on their military. Do you think that might change, by the way, with the way that Trump sort of...
Well, have you considered that the United Nations is fucking shit? Like, literally a worthless organisation that won't do anything ever.
I don't know if I entirely agree.
Fucking liberal. No.
Yeah, well, I do think that there is something to, because like if that was the case, Donald Trump wouldn't want to be withdrawing from and insulting every.
But Donald Trump's an arsehole.
Yeah, I mean
it's embarrassing for him, but they're not going to oppose him in any way.
Yeah, but that's the thing with Trump. Like, he doesn't need something to really challenge him for him to have a paddy. You know, they can just say something. So
he just crashed the world economy for nothing.
Yeah, like so him wanting to withdraw from the UN might not be less about the UN being effective and more of the fact that Donald Trump is just crazy.
What do you mean by effective? Because this is the thing. I think they have like.
I'm not saying ineffective, by the way, but I just posit the idea that the UN has been pretty weak.
Yeah, it's been weak, but it never really had the hard power to go up against America. Like its military backing always came from America, so standing up to America was always something that the UN wasn't really able to do.
So
However,
I'll repeat myself.
the UN,
it's fucking pointless.
but it's not pointless because
In a unipolar world, where America gets to financially and militarily dominate, then an organization that has no power over that hegemon is pretty much worthless.
I don't think they have no power. I think they've got no hard power. They have a lot of soft power influence. Like when Antonio Guterres says, the situation in Gaza needs to end, when the World Court brings calls for the leaders of Likud and Hamas to be brought before them. Like that doesn't have no influence.
Okay, it's embarrassing for them, sure, but did either of those things happen?
No, neither of those things happened, but that would fall under
so
hard
they're ineffective then.
I don't think that means that
what would soft
totally
power
ineffective.
look like then? Because isn't soft power a form of power? So even if you were to say, well, something getting done is hard power and something not getting done is soft power, then you could probably argue that that's still no power.
Well, no, soft power does exist, and that's fine.
Right, but in terms of this
is a good
context,
way of being able to either avoid the use of hard power or to aid and assist your use of hard power should it be necessary. But if you have no hard power, then your soft power is at best annoying to the person in power. But as much as I think probably the people of Palestine do appreciate that the ICC has put out arrest warrants and do appreciate that Guterres has said ceasefire, we need to have a ceasefire now, and that all of these other world leaders have said these things, it ultimately doesn't stop the bombs from dropping on their tents.
This is true, but at the same time, support for Israel and sympathy for the Palestinians has never been higher across the world right now. And a great deal of that will be not just due to the United Nations and their soft power, but organizations like Amnesty International, speaking out.
Well, we are having, France are looking at very soon recognizing the Palestinian state. Whispers that apparently Labour are doing it. But again, for me, Labour recognising Palestine as state materially makes no difference given their involvement in this genocide. I think at best it sways the conversation, but ultimately Kevin's right when it doesn't stop the bombs.
Well, but ultimately, recognising the Palestinian state is still the right thing to do, even if they're doing it for silly reasons and it doesn't in any way mitigate their evil. It's still just the right thing to do, obviously.
Agreed. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Britain doesn't have either the hard or soft power to realistically stop this. But what it can do, is at least
not be part of it,
not be on the wrong side of history. We can't stop it, sure. What we can do is like Miliband, the quote
earlier on,
Miliband saying, "Oh well, if we don't sell the weapons, someone else does." Okay, well, fucking let them then.
And that makes that even logically.
Let them have the fucking blood on their hands.
Right, logically that makes sense to me though. It's like,
you saying, other evil people will do things. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you get to do evil things.
That was a wild thing to say though.
David Miliband is a fucking piece of shit.
As if someone else's arms is going to be more deadly than ours. No, it's exactly the same as well. It's not like, we have the good arms and they have the bad arms. Arms are fucking arms. But that's a David Miliband moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so New Labour. Oh my God.
So New Labour.
It is. That's the end of the comments.
Okay.
So we can close out there, I think.
All right. Well, then that is all we have time for. I want to thank, of course, all of our viewers who tuned in. And, of course, thank you to Kevin. Once again, you were an absolute delight.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Remember to please like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you again. I'm Curtis Daly, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.